You hear this? Can you hear me now? How about now? Okay. Okay, the topic that I'd like to discuss is something of basically a great irony insofar as this whole business about Islam and defamation and blasphemy. And it's an irony that I believe is wholly missed on Muslims, first and foremost, which is basically that if, as the OIC, as we heard, and any number of other Islamic organizations and bodies wish to enforce and create a defamation law for religions, because as Robert just pointed out, they always say we want all religions protected, but of course in reality it's for Islam. But they always use this sort of language that is inclusive and says all religions need to be respected, no one should defame them, etc., etc. And so the irony, of course, that I'd like to discuss is if this law ever came to pass, and if there was any logic involved in the world, Islam itself would be completely banned, because it is the only religion that is fundamentally based on defaming and disparaging and blackening every other religion. And this is one of the greatest irony that I fail to understand how so many people are missing, especially Muslims. So first, let me, just to kind of set the stage, give you a few quotes, all in the context of the Muhammad YouTube movie that created or was used as a pretext for havoc, death, and destruction, as usual. The OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, issued a statement saying that it deplored an offensive and derogatory film on the life of Prophet Muhammad and called on the producers to show respect to the religious sentiments held sacred by Muslims and those of other faiths, because the OIC wants you to know that it respects all religions. This isn't just about themselves. Okay. The Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan, when the film came out and all the havoc and riots, said that the film insults religions, plural. And then he called for, and this is a quote, international legal regulations against attacks on what people, not just Muslims, deem sacred. Again, he used it in a very inclusive way to point out that we, Muslims, are against attacks or derogatory statements or blasphemy or anything else against religions. Even Saudi Arabia's Grand Mufti, who a year earlier issued a fatwa saying every single church anywhere near the Arabian Peninsula must be destroyed according to Islamic law, and actually according to Muhammad's deathbed wish, which was basically that no two religions can be practiced in the Arabian Peninsula. This same man actually issued, in response to the Muhammad movie, the YouTube one, he called for a global ban on insults targeting all religious figures. And then the Grand Mufti, or the Grand Imam of Egypt's Al-Azhar, again the top Islamic figure of Egypt and one of the highest Islamic institutions, called for a UN resolution outlawing insulting symbols and sanctities of Islam and other religions. Okay, so keep in mind that all of these organizations make it a point to say we don't want any religion to be attacked. And they have to do that because, of course, why should the international community really care or give them ear if it's only about Islam? So they have to use that line. Now, to continue, we have to define real quickly, so what is defamation? Because that's usually the word used in the context when these topics come up in the UN and international bodies. Definition of defamation, just to give you typical standard dictionary definitions, is basically to blacken another's reputation or a false or unjustified injury of the good reputation of another, as by slander or libel, or basically to disparage and offend the beliefs of someone else. This is defamation, and I think most Muslims would agree, yes, this is what defamation is, and they want it outlawed for Islam and, technically speaking, for all religions. Okay, so then we come to a big problem. What then do we do with the fact that Islam's core religious texts, beginning with the Quran itself, followed by the Hadith, and followed by the edicts and the verdicts of the ulama, which is basically, in Arabic, what's known as usul al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh is basically all of those texts and documents that formulate Islamic law and basically define what is right and wrong in Islam. What are they? The first one is the Quran, of course. The second one is the Hadith, which is basically the recorded words and sayings of Muhammad. as well as the companions, the righteous companions, including the first 4 caliphs. And after that, another major source of what formulates right and wrong in Sharia is basically the ulama, or the Islamic scholars, and if they ever reach a consensus on something, then it becomes part of Islamic law. So, let's begin. Let's begin at looking at a few Quranic verses. Quran 573 declares, in no unequivocal terms, and I'm reading as a quote, that infidels are they who say Allah is one of 3, which is a reference to the Christian Trinity. Quran 572 says infidels are they who say Allah is the Christ, basically Jesus, and then it says Son of Mary. And Quran 930 goes on to say, the Christians say the Christ is the Son of Allah, may Allah's curse be upon them. Okay, so now I have a question, and this would be a question to Muslims basically. What if a Christian book, an authoritative Christian book, say the Bible, went out of the way and wrote in it, and it said, infidels are they who say Muhammad is the prophet of God, Allah's curse upon them. Would that not be defamation? Would that not anger Muslims? Would that not cause riots and havoc and destruction? And here it is in the Quran, and yet apparently it's not deemed a defamation against other religions, in this case Christianity. Let's look at another source, the Hadith. As I mentioned, the Quran is the pillar. The second pillar amongst Sunnis, of course, is the Hadith, the recorded sayings. There's a Hadith that says that the Christian cross, which is of course venerated among millions of Christians of all denominations, is of course defamed and disparaged against in Islam. Muhammad himself insists in the Hadith that when Jesus returns, he will be so angry at the concept of the cross that it will be his first thing to do is to destroy all the crucifixes of the world and then kill the pigs. But first he's going to destroy all the crucifixes. Now this is a canonical Hadith, and these are the words of Muhammad. Muhammad himself, whenever he entered in a place and he saw any object that looked like a cross, would destroy it. And when he would meet anyone who had a cross on, would tell them, take that idolatry thing off. So now I wonder, the question of course to Muslims would be, what if a Christian book basically said that the sacred things of Islam, one of the most being the black stone of the Kaaba in Mecca, the meteor, the black stone that they all venerate and revolve around and kiss. What if someone said that, what if a Christian book said that Muhammad, when he returns, is going to destroy the black stone because it was a piece of idolatry? What kind of reaction would that prompt among Muslims? Would that be something that you can just ignore and brush aside, no big deal? Or would that actually create a lot more havoc than we've seen so far? Now let's look at the top Islamic scholars and the sort of things that they've said, their exegeses. One of the most famous, of course, is Ibn Kathir, known as Ibn Kathir, and I think he thrived in the 13th century. Now, he actually, based on some Quranic verses and hadiths, his interpretation is that Muhammad said he will be married in paradise to Mary, the daughter of Imran. And of course, Imran and that whole kind of understanding in the Quran means Mary, the mother of Jesus. She will basically be one of Muhammad's many wives. So a question, what if a Christian book said that one of Muhammad's wives, precious young Aisha, the mother of believers, is in heaven married to a false prophet and married to him, and this came out in a book about a book really saying that Muslims, your wonderful Aisha, the wife of prophet, the mother of believers, is married to some guy in heaven, and she's just one of his many wives, not Muhammad, some other guy. Now, and these sorts of things are not, I've quoted to you from the fundamental sources of Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, and the words of the ulama, and the verdicts that they've issued in their fatwas. And this sort of thing has, these are classical documents now I've told you of, but it really doesn't end there. I just saw recently on a very popular Islamic website called Islam Web, which issues Arabic fatwas, an entire fatwa based on justifying and saying it is permissible for Muslims to curse and demean Christianity. And then they clarify the Christianity that is the false Christianity, that is the one that every Christian believes in, not the mythical Christianity of the Quran, which never existed and has no basis. And so here you have a fatwa legitimizing and saying in an Islamic context it is okay for Muslims to curse and make fun of and disparage Christianity. So what do we do with this? Now, the greater irony of all this is that what has caused Muslims to riot and destroy and havoc and all this? Cartoons, movies. Now, the people who drew these cartoons, the people who make these movies, they are representative of only themselves. They don't represent Christianity. They don't represent Judaism. They're people who they have no authority insofar. They're not theologians. They have no grounding. And they're just, sole individuals who represent only themselves, and they made things like a movie or they made a cartoon, and they created mass riots and havoc. Okay? Now, this is the great irony to me, and yet here we have the fundamental core text of Islam, the entire Islamic worldview based on extremely disparaging things about other religions. I mentioned, I just focused on Christianity, but of course I could point out that in the Quran, in God's word, Jews are monkeys and pigs. That's also a bit offensive, you would think. How would Muslims react if the Bible said Muslims are monkeys and pigs? And those who say that Muhammad is the prophet of Allah are infidels. Allah's curse on them. So you have to understand that there is an immense and absurd, in my mind, discrepancy in this whole debate. That if they really want to push this to the limit and say that we want to ban anything, any document, anything that basically offends religions, plural, Islam is going to have to go, or at least big chunks of its texts, and that's not something I believe Muslims want. So I think this is the issue that needs to be brought up, and this is one of the topics I think when this blasphemy issue comes about, people should actually try to remember this, because to me it's just ludicrous to hear people complaining about one man who made one movie and doesn't represent anything except himself, and all of a sudden the whole world has to stand up as Muslims riot and burn and kill, and then the core essence of their religion is built on defaming everyone else in very ugly terms. And it just, of course, doesn't end with defamation. I wish it did. There's, of course, as we saw, the opening verse, Quran 9:29, where it says, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His Messenger have made unlawful, and who do not accept the religion of truth, which is Islam, from the people of the book," which is basically Jews and Christians, "until they willingly pay tribute or jizya and feel themselves utterly subdued." So here we have books, a religious book that commands people to not only curse and to condemn and to say all terrible things about other people's beliefs, but it also incites them to go on the offensive and violence and to subjugate them. And I think it is this issue, Islam's perceived divine right to defame and destroy, that the international community should be addressing, not silly cartoons and not silly films. And I think that's kind of that's one of the topics I'd like to see brought more into this entire debate that I don't see, because the hypocrisy is just overbearing, in my opinion. And that's it. Thank you.